Welcome to Real Turkey channel. My name is Atilla Yaşilada, and today I'm going to talk about Turkey's impending slow motion currency crash. Now, you may scratch your head and say, dude, are you losing your mind? You have done at least 10 videos about currency crashes. Yeah, 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 I have. And they all came true. Currency crashes are like the allergy season in Turkey. It happens in the spring, it happens in the autumn. In normal countries, currency crises, at worst, if there is very poor economic management, happen once a decade. And they are so traumatic. Policymakers are punished so badly that they take the correct measures to stop the currency crises and to make sure it never happens again. But as far as Turkish government goes, Einstein's definition of insanity applies. I'm not even going to read that. I think everyone knows that. And in Einstein's definition, Mr. Erdogan and his colleagues in the cabinet are brilliant. What are they doing? Well, let me just motivate this by asking you a simple question. It's an economics question or a finance question, but you don't have to have a degree in economics or finance, and you don't even have to be in the world of economics to give me the answer because it's so common sense. The question is, suppose you live in a country with high and rising inflation. Moreover, you have a currency that loses its value against all the other currencies in the world day by day. What would you do? Probably most of you would scratch your heads and say, well, I'd raise interest rates. Others might say, wow, 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 that's fixed, that's foul play. How would you know that you would raise interest rates? The answer is simple. I read in the newspapers. I open New York Times, Financial Times, Washington Post, South Dakota Morning Mail, whatever, and you would read the first headline. Inflation up in the United States, Fed raising interest rates. European inflation is getting out of hand. European Central Bank is raising interest rates. Russia is raising interest rates. Brazil is raising interest rates. Malaysia is. Patagonia is. Mugumbuland is raising interest rates when you have an inflation problem. You don't need to know more. This is how it is done. It's sort of like you have a headache, take an aspirin or, a non-subscription painkiller. Will it always work? No, but it will work most of the time and it won't harm you. If the headache consists, you go to the doctor. This is not what Turkey does. Mr. Erdogan firmly believes that the best remedy for rising inflation is lowering interest rates. And let me show you. It's all here. I just speak from evidence, not from my own personal opinion. This is JP Morgan's latest forecast of Turkey's inflation. See, if you look at the numbers here, Turkey's inflation has soared from roughly 20% to 70% in the short span of 4 months. It's going to peak like American inflation and then come down to what? It's going to come down to roughly 45%. Now let's look at interest rates, which covers the past. This is what the government or the central bank did. It lowered interest rates. Let me just switch back and forth between them. It lowered interest rates as inflation rose. And even today, it insists that inflation has nothing to do with interest rates. The low interest rate policy is working. How do I know? Because our finance minister met with leading producers, food processing industry giants in Turkey, and advised them not to raise their prices. So we think we can actually control prices when the world food prices are increasing across the world and stop inflation. Again, Einstein, you were a genius. Unfortunately, Mr. Erdogan and his colleagues aren't. Okay, I had fun with this, but honestly, guys, I mean, just look at the videos listed below. I think only 2 months ago, I shot a video saying Next stop is capital controls, which is what will happen this time. I predicted that this will happen 2 months ago because, you know, the Turkish economy is managed so insanely, it's difficult to make a forecasting error. You know what's going to happen. It's sort of like a guy who doesn't believe in gravity and jumps from 20th floor of a skyscraper. And when he's passing in front of 10th floor, somebody asks, "Hey, how is it going?" And the guy says, "So far, so good. This is what we're doing." Okay, what's happening this time? Well, as I've said, you have 70% inflation, 12% main interest rate, which means people are going to consume. They're not going to save. Nobody is going to invest into Turkey, so money is going to flee Turkey. As a result, inflation will drive currency devaluation, and as the currency devaluation steepens, all the foreign money in Turkey will come out and go somewhere else where people pursue more rational policies. This happened last in December, on 21st of December 2021. Again, I've shot 2 videos about that. You can watch it. And instead of raising interest rates, the government concocted this really harebrained scheme. It said, look, we know you like dollars and we know, you don't like inflation. So here's the deal. Give me your dollars. I'll give you a savings instrument, a savings deposit that pays you the rate of Turkish lira depreciation against the dollar. So I have the certificate, 3-month savings certificate, that says if in the next 3 months Turkish lira loses 10% against the dollar, you would get an interest rate from the bank plus 10%, which is your currency loss from the government. That stopped the panic. But of course, it didn't last because inflation keeps rising. And these morons have pegged the dollar against the Turkish lira at a level of 15. So now people who switched to this FX protected deposit certificates are not making any money. So they are bailing out. This time we're not going to have an overnight event because central bank is ordered to defend the currency at any cost at the expense of spending all of its foreign currency holdings. It still has about 35 billion of foreign currency reserves, which means we can fight this battle like Putin is fighting in Ukraine, which is completely futile and we're doomed to lose. But, damn the torpedoes. We're not going to change course. This is the math of the coming currency crisis. Remember, no money is coming in. The residents want to have dollars, not Turkish lira. And Turkey has an external deficit in the next 12 months of roughly $40 billion. So, this is the amount of money that we'll have to pay to the external world to buy the goods and services that we need. So, you have $35 billion in central bank to pay for what you need, and you have a need of $40 billion. But that's not the worst of the news. In addition to that mismatch, we also have residents wanting to buy dollars. How much? Well, last week, in the last data week, Turkish corporates and individuals bought $1.7 billion worth of foreign currency, added their foreign currency holdings. So that's like roughly $7 billion a month. And you imagine, I mean, in 5 months, central bank will be paying these people off so they can buy dollars. And once again, currency crises. This is not over. Turkey also has $165 billion worth of foreign loans or bonds coming due in the next 12 months. So, Turkish banks or non-financial corporations will either have to pay this money and borrow it again, or just pay it off and say, thank you very much, I don't need dollar loans. Of course, when Fed is raising interest rates, which raises the loan rates and the bond rates across the world, a lot of these corporates and banks say, well, I don't need this money because it's too expensive, so I'm just going to pay you back. So let's suppose 10% of that $165 billion is simply paid back. It's not being borrowed once again. That's another $16.5 billion coming out of the central bank's reserves. You see, the math doesn't work. Let's summarize this. Money at hand, $35 billion. That's central bank's reserves. Payables in the next 12 months, $40 billion for current account deficit, external deficit. Roughly $16.5 billion that Turkish banks and corporates want the central bank to pay on their account to foreign creditors, plus roughly $7 billion of your own citizens demanding dollars from the central bank. Again, what's the end result? Well, the end result is Einstein's definition of insanity. Can Erdogan change these policies? No. Even if he does, it's just too late, simply because inflation is 70% and the central bank's interest rate is 12%. To fight inflation, you have to offer an interest rate that's above the rate of going inflation. So let's say 75% interest rate. From 12% to 75% is a 6,300 basis point rate hike, which hasn't happened in human history. Maybe it happened in Alpha Centauri. I don't know. I wasn't there lately. But it hasn't happened in human history. If you do something like that, Turkish economy will come crashing down. How do I know? Well, again, read the debate about how fast Fed should hike rates. Some people say, well, 50 basis points, that's 0.5% a month, is a good amount of monetary tightening because anything faster than that will probably lead to a recession. And there are others who say, yeah, I understand, but I mean, we can't deal with the recession. But if inflation becomes entrenched, sticky, then you will have more rate hikes in the future. So let's go with 0.75%. Remember, 0.75% in Turkey, you have to do 6,300%. So it's not doable. And of course, the result is obvious. I can't tell you when because it's slow motion, but in a month, maybe in 2 months. If we're lucky, we can last until October thanks to a good tourism season, but I doubt it. Latest by October, Turkish lira will come crashing down again. How much? Well, in December, it lost something again. Let me show you here by inflate. Oops, here we go. Yeah. In December, right here, where the curve spikes up sharply, it lost something like 30%. So that's fair. But it won't come to that because, as I predicted in my video 2 months ago, before it reaches that point, Turkey will have currency controls. That means Turkish residents will not be able to invest abroad or send money abroad for financial reasons, and probably their foreign currency deposits in the banks will be frozen, not converted, not confiscated by the government, but they will be unable to use it for the time being. This is not a novel idea, neither am I conjuring this out of my sick mind. It's what, you know, uh, EU or European Central Bank forced Greece to do in 2001 peripheral countries debt crisis. So it's a common method. Russia did that too. I mean, they said, look, you have $100,000 in the bank, fine, but the most you can withdraw is $10,000. I think Kazakhstan is doing the same thing. It's a pretty common method. The method is common, but obviously citizens will not be pleased. What will be the end game? Well, at the end, of course, the people get sick and tired of losing their lifelong savings to Erdogan's insanity, and they'll get rid of Erdogan. We will have an election latest by next June, and as I've said, Erdogan is going to lose because nobody is going to keep a leader that's constantly starving them and robbing their money. Two, inflation, once again, let me show you the graphic here. Inflation with JP Morgan forecasts to drop to 45%, something like that at the end of the year, would instead keep spiking up and go from 70% to triple digits. That's Turkey will have an inflation rate of above 100%. Finally, of course, a massive economic recession, simply because people can't afford imports, simply because their incomes, their salaries, wages they receive each month, has no value whatsoever. And because they have lost most of their wealth to either capital currency controls or to the currency crash. These are inevitable. They are as inevitable as the coming of seasons and as gravity for the man who jumped from the 20th floor, not for Erdogan. He never learns. Let me conclude this by showing some background articles you can read to make sure I'm not making this up, because honestly, as I listen to myself, I think I am making this up because this can't happen. It's too crazy. So here are three articles, all published on the day of the shooting of this video by Financial Times, Reuters, Bloomberg, which I consider reliable sources that tell you about Turkey's currency crash and how the government is trying to delay it by desperate measures. I want to thank you once again for watching this channel. It doesn't have much of an audience, and I couldn't care less. I like telling the truth about Turkey as I see it, and I really love your comments. Keep them coming. Let me show you one more chart here before I leave. My not last video, but the one before the last was about Turkey's coming housing crash. It is coming. And this is a chart by one of my friends, Ibrahim Can. It's in Turkish. It shows you why the house prices are doomed to crash. This is the rent index, Istanbul rent index. In July 2021, the rents as an index value were at 100, at 100. In less than a year, rents jumped by 150%. Let's end this video by celebrating the unique brilliance of Mr. Einstein.